Hi, I'm Riley Cohen and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. The Ford government is building 13 new state-of-the-art facilities for the Ontario Provincial Police. That includes 4 new police detachments around the Northwest, along with a new regional headquarters in Thunder Bay. The OPP's current headquarters for the Northwest region has been located inside the MTO building in Thunder Bay for more than a decade. There's no word on where the new facility will be built. Infrastructure Ontario is seeking qualified firms to help design, build, and finance the new headquarters, along with 12 OPP detachments. The 4 area communities where the existing detachments will be replaced are Ignace, Kenora, Red Lake, and Sioux Lookout. The last time a major renewal of OPP facilities was carried out, new detachments were built in Fort Frances and Marathon at the cost of around $20 million apiece. The province has not provided a timeline or estimated total costs for this round of construction. After a $50 million investment by the Ontario government in last week's budget, the plans for an all-nations hospital in Kenora have entered the next phase. Hospital officials hosted a news conference on Zoom on Thursday and say they're gearing up to begin the advanced planning process. Justin Hardy has more.
The big project, estimated to cost over $800 million, isn't expected to be complete for nearly a decade, and before officials can break ground, the project will need to go through a roughly 3-year-long advanced planning process. Allison Wesley James, the VP of Operations and Capital Planning, says the $50 million from the province is very close to what they need.
We had identified a budget of closer to 85 million, but that was for the full project, for those consulting fees and other studies for the full project. We've already come a long ways, and I fully expect that during the construction phase, we will receive supplemental monies. But yeah, so I think we're in very good stead to complete this next step.
Wesley James adds that the project team is anticipating being partnered with a team from Infrastructure Ontario to jointly decide on a project delivery model, which will ultimately decide on how long the build will take.
So when it comes to schedule, the final project delivery model that's negotiated between Infrastructure Ontario and ourselves will dictate how long the project will take. So once that delivery model has been settled upon with IO and the Ministry of Health is also involved, then there will be target dates set for each of the project milestones.
The new hospital will be built on a 118-acre lot recently acquired by the Kenora Chiefs Advisory, which is a partner in the All Nations Hospital project. Justin Hardy, TVT News.
One person has died in a house fire in Sandy Lake First Nation. A spokesperson for Anishinaabe Police says they received a call for service about a residential fire just after 5 o'clock Thursday evening. 9 occupants escaped the blaze, but 1 person was confirmed as deceased. Community firefighters were also on scene trying to get the fire under control. The scene is being held and members of NAP's crime unit are now involved in the ongoing investigation. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization is looking for proposals to design its Center of Expertise in the town of Ignace. The price tag for the planned facility could reach nearly $100 million with completion by 2028. The center will house the NWMO offices as the agency moves to Ignace to continue along the regulatory process for the planned nuclear storage facility near Revel Lake. The building will be home to a technical and social research program, along with demonstrations and displays of the entire process of packaging and placing used nuclear fuel deep underground. NWMO spokesperson Vice Ponca says the organization will be putting a special emphasis on local and First Nation contractors.
Bids coming close from firms closest to Ignace and Wabigoon will be getting basically bonus points. So we are looking for firms ideally that are as close to Ignace and Wabigoon as possible. So it is quite exciting for firms safer here in Thunder Bay that actually have a bit of a leg up compared to firms in Toronto or elsewhere in Canada. So it's very exciting and just really the start of the major opportunities for big firms in Thunder Bay and region to take advantage of this deep geological repository project.
The request for proposals is open until June 13th. The organization has not chosen an exact location yet, but Ponca says it will be along Highway 17, somewhere in Ignace. And speaking of Ignace, is looking at a number of options for the future of the town's old aerodrome. One of those options includes upgrading it into a full airport with a price tag over $40 million. Ignace's aerodrome fell into issue more than 20 years ago. At the end of 2024, Councillor contracted the Lumex Group to look into possible options as the town readies itself for the iconic boom from the planned nuclear waste repository. The firm recently reported to Ignace Council that it would cost $8.4 million to restore the aerodrome or $41.8 million for a full airport build-out, which could include widening and lengthening the runway for business jets. Mayor Kim Bakery says council will make a decision at a later time.
We don't want to rush into closing it because then you have to start over. It's, I believe, called a NOTAM right now, and that is that no one can fly into there, but it can be started up again, like without, you know, very much going into that to get it started again.
Lumex also presented other options like a supply chain and operations hub for the $26 billion repository project, or an outdoor hub with a campground and sports field. Greenstone OPP have laid murder charges in connection to a death in that community earlier this month. 32-year-old Brandon Rich died in hospital after officers responded to what was reported as a medical emergency just after midnight on May 15th. Police have now charged a Greenstone resident, 19-year-old Alexis Agamwe, with second-degree murder. She remains in custody, and the OPP investigation continues. The family of a woman who drowned in a lagoon along Nipigon River last fall has now filed an official complaint against the Ontario Provincial Police. The body of 34-year-old Vanessa Stacy Geisler was located by OPP divers on October 12th, one day after first responders were called out by a person in distress in the water. Her sister Gazella spoke to us in March regarding her concerns about how the investigation was handled.
When I went to Nipigon, the person who was on the case at the time gave us some information, and the information that I got didn't really stand well with me because it didn't seem like they collected the evidence that should have been collected at the time.
Every effort is being made to understand what happened to Vanessa, with the goal to provide resolution her family deserves.
The sister filed a request with the Law Enforcement Complaints Agency, formerly known as the OIPRD, demanding justice and accountability for what she alleges was gross mishandling of the case by Nipigon OPP. Another person was present when Geisler ended up in the water, and the family claims the investigation officer failed to detain the man and question him immediately. Police later confirmed that they've not ruled out foul play in the death. OPP Sergeant Brittany Bemerneck provided a statement in response to the complaint being filed.
We sympathize with Vanessa Stacy Geisler's family and friends as they continue to grieve her loss. The OPP remains committed to understanding what happened to Vanessa. The investigation into her death is active and ongoing under the direction of the OPP Criminal Investigation Branch. Death investigations are inherently complex and require time to thoroughly investigate. Detectives continue to maintain open communication with the family, sharing as much information as they can while protecting the integrity of the case. As difficult as it is not always possible to share all the details of the investigation with families, friends, or with the media.
A spokesperson for Law Enforcement Complaints Agency says they are unable to commit on any specific cases or complaints due to confidentiality provisions of the Community Safety and Policing Act. Canada Post workers here in Thunder Bay and across the country will not be heading to the picket lines after all. Instead, the union leadership has directed their members to refuse to work any overtime going forward. The union represents around 260 postal workers around the Northwest. The last strike began on November 15th and ended 4 weeks later when postal workers were ordered back to work by the Industrial Relations Board while a deal was negotiated. Last week, the union filed a strike notice to begin on Friday after Canada Post put a pause on negotiations. The corporation brought forward another offer on Wednesday, and then very early Friday morning, the union put their strike plans on hold as negotiators continued to review the offer. Local union president Leo Favreau says he's glad the leadership chose the overtime ban instead of a full strike action.
This is what I was hoping for all along. I want to see my members making money, and I want to see the public get their mail. And a lot of the stuff that came out of Canada Post, and when their news issues and stuff like that, really didn't make a lot of sense to me. So at least this way they can take the offer that was put out, the 750-page offer, and actually look it over.
Canada Post says customers may experience delays due to the job action. Coming up after the break, NAN Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler says he's worried about the intentions of Premier and Prime Minister after their recent election victories.
These are real threats that we are going to be facing while addressing the many challenges that exist in our communities.
Welcome back. The leader of Anishinaabe Nation called out the provincial and federal governments during NAN's annual spring meeting, which was held in Toronto this week. During his opening speech, Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler accused Premier Doug Ford of planning to use his new strong mandate to, quote, do whatever he wants to do.
And we're seeing one example of that with Bill 5. That he thinks he can just create what he calls economic zones and do whatever, disregarding everything. Disregarding our treaty, our rights, disregarding the obligations that he has in his government under UNDRIP for free, prior, and informed consent.
Chief Fiddler also pointed to potential threats on the federal front. Fiddler says he's extremely wary of Prime Minister Mark Carney's focus on economic issues during the campaign, with little mention of social issues and reconciliation. Fiddler says that, coupled with the relationship between Ford and Carney, leads him to believe there's been some sort of an understanding to implement their economic agendas.
And I am sure that in the days and weeks ahead, that we will hear more about what the federal government is doing or planning to do. And it's all under the guise of national security or economic security. And so these are real threats that we are going to be facing while addressing the many challenges that exist in our communities.
Premier Doug Ford is defending his government's controversial Bill 5 despite mounting concern over environmental impacts and First Nation rights. The bill has been widely criticized for the proposed creation of so-called special economic zones that would allow the government to sidestep existing regulations. CTV's Siobhan Morris reports.
They traveled over 1,000 kilometers from Ontario's north to the provincial legislature in downtown Toronto. Indigenous leaders demanding their concerns be heard on Bill 5. Tariff-era legislation meant to speed up development of mines, including in the Ring of Fire, about 500 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. A committee meeting on the bill this week was sometimes tense.
You're not answering my question. You're just blowing smoke.
The government says it takes as long as 15 years to get a new mine into operation. Not workable in the face of economic pressure from the U.S.
We will support Canada in your fight with, uniting, but it can't be at the expense of our lands and our families.
The Minister of Mines insists he's open to feedback.
It's important that we listen, we hear perspective, but we don't lose sight of what we're trying to achieve, which is economic self-reliance.
But Indigenous leaders say if the bill goes ahead as written, it sends a message.
The Ontario values speed and industry over reconciliation and short-term profits over long-term relationships.
The bill would also allow the government to suspend some provincial and local laws by creating special economic zones. The Ring of Fire in line for that designation.
We are a treaty partner to Ontario, and you need to be serious about fulfilling those obligations that you have.
The government maintains the bill doesn't only respect the duty to consult First Nations on development.
In my experienced view, enhance it to the extent that we'll be able to talk about common interests, common goals.
The legislation shifts consultation to be about a project as a whole rather than each step along the way.
Thank you.
The Premier acknowledges there are divisions among First Nations about mining in their communities, but defends his government's approach.
People elected us to move quick, and that's exactly what we're going to do. But it's for the betterment of that region, the communities, First Nations, and for all of Ontarians.
The government has committed some $3 billion to help Indigenous communities participate in mining. But one council member says that's throwing money at the issue. It's not the real engagement her community is after. At Queen's Park, Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
The area woman who heads up the Ontario Autism Coalition is reacting to the latest budget from the Ford government, which saw an 8% funding increase for the Ontario Autism program. Coalition President Alina Cameron says she remains concerned about whether it's enough to make a real difference. Ryan Graham has more.
As part of the provincial budget released last week, this year's funding for the Ontario Autism program was set at $779 million, a $60 million increase from last year. While the Ontario Autism Coalition does welcome the extra funding, they see it as long overdue. According to Coalition President Alina Cameron, proper care and early intervention are key.
Any increase to the Ontario Autism program funding-wise is greatly appreciated and needed, but we're left with a lot of questions about where this funding is going to be used specifically. Most families are concerned about access to core clinical services, and we're not sure if that's where it's slated to go. So we know that early intervention is key. We're told that the moment our children get a diagnosis, and we know that from speaking with families through the Ontario Autism Coalition that the families getting invitations now to core clinical services are families that registered for the program in the spring of 2020. So it's minimum a 5-year wait at present, meaning early intervention is not accessible right now in Ontario for anyone.
Premier Doug Ford is calling the new overall budget a plan to protect Ontario, at a time that Canada has become unsteadied by tariffs. Concerns do remain, however, from the Autism Coalition towards the Ford government about the lack of clarity and accountability regarding how this new funding for them will be spent, with a growing concern that this particular crisis is worsening.
The consequences are you have a whole cohort of children in Ontario who are needlessly going through life struggling. There are supports, there are services out there that can help families, they just can't get access to them. And that starts to snowball. You have children who then access the school system, which is also not funded adequately to help children like ours, and they are often excluded from school. And you have families then who have at least one person in the household who's acting as a full-time caregiver. It snowballs very quickly in our world.
Cameron says families across the province are exhausted, and they are hoping this new funding will help fix a broken system and deliver the timely support their children need. Ryan Graham, TBT News.
Up next, the MNR gets a slight reprieve in their battle against the region's forest fires. Welcome back. Cool weekend temperatures and rain helped the forest fire situation in northwestern Ontario this past week, but the hazard level is now back to high to extreme in the western part of the region. The biggest fire, Kenora 20, remains at around 31,000 hectares. It's been threatening Wasambug First Nation, and an evacuation order is still in effect. Crews from Ontario and BC are working to get that fire under control. A little further south, an evacuation alert in areas around Fort Francis Fire 4 was lifted, but that fire is still not considered under control. Fire Information Officer Chris Marchand says the restricted fire zone remains in effect, but the favorable conditions over the May-long weekend help firefighters around the Northwest.
Yes, lower temperatures and wet weather has reduced both the wildland fire hazard and fire behavior on the region's active fires. Though rainfall totals in most places were really nowhere sufficient to completely turn around the situation that we were in around this time last week. The cool weather has afforded us some time to get firefighting resources into the places where work needs to be done. But we're already seeing fire behavior back on the rise as we enter another drying trend.
Marchand says the restricted fire zone is assessed on a regular basis, but is still unknown when it will be lifted. Back in March, several Lakehead University student athletes had the chance to bring the Lakehead Reach Up program to Grassy Narrows First Nation. The visit proved to be a rewarding experience for everyone involved, creating new connections through shared activities and a cultural exchange. As part of the initiative, 2 documentaries capturing the visit and its impact were produced and later presented at the LU Outpost. Beyond inspiring youth through sport and mentorship, the Lakehead student athletes had the unique opportunity to explore Grassy Narrows, taking in its natural beauty and gaining a deeper understanding and appreciation of the community's way of life. The impact of the experience was undeniable, as captured in the powerful documentaries.
Instantly right away, we obviously built on our connections as athletes, but to just get implemented into the community, they just welcomed us with open arms, and it made the experience really special, and I was really lucky and fortunate to be a part of it.
Our people just came together and realized what was going on. We had food and connections around, and they came to sat out, came to watch us play and cheer us on, have dinner with each other, making memories together.
Hussein Durrani, a Lakehead University alumni, former faculty member, and now Director for Talent and Organizational Development at the Future Mercury Care Home in Grassy Narrows, shared his appreciation for the collaboration, calling it both meaningful and impactful.
An absolute spectacular week of sports, reconciliation, partnerships, collaborations, happiness. It's not just about sports. It's about inspiring the community members, the youth of Grassy, to pursue post-secondary opportunities with Lakehead University, and that has been a success.
The documentary will premiere in Grassy Narrows in mid-June for the community and schools. In Thunder Bay, Lakehead University is working to organize a series of local screenings, and this is just the beginning. Durrani explains as there are plans to continue to expand this initiative.
We have now started these programs. We're going to get our Lakehead athletes come there at least twice a year, and we're going to have camps that build that talent and channel that talent to varsity teams, to leagues all over Canada.
From hockey to soccer to volleyball, the athletes embraced every opportunity. The experience fostered deep gratitude on both sides and highlighted the value of connection, cultural exchange, and mentorship.
Yeah, on behalf of all the Lakehead athletes and coaches and students that were able to go to Grassy Communities, we're very thankful for that opportunity and just all the friendships we made with all these guys right here.
Riley Cohen, TBT News. Thank you so much for tuning into this edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Riley Cohen, and I'll catch you next time.